What's up guys, Trevor Hunter here with Dirt Bike Test. Today we have Tyler Belknap with me, and today we're talking about the 2023 Honda CRF450RX. So they're a 450 off-road race bike, and we had a chance to ride it at the Chocolate Mountain Ranch earlier this week for the Johnny Campbell kind of Honda celebration. But we didn't feel like we got quite enough time on the bike to give a detailed first impression. So we brought it out here today to Honda Valley to do some more trail riding. Maybe not necessarily in its wheelhouse, but something that should be capable of doing for sure as an off-road bike. And yeah, we have quite a few opinions about it today. So start with the motor. Bike has plenty of power at all times. Hondas have never really lacked in power in the last few years, and this bike is no different. With all their motor changes with the throttle body and all the cylinder head and that kind of stuff, there is quite a few changes to the motor but it still has plenty of power. Definitely a lot smoother power and easier to ride power than I'd say the previous generation was, like the 21 and 22. But still has pretty good power. It's a little snappy and kind of aggressive. So we went from map 1, which is standard, to map 2, which is like the more mellow, smoother mapping, and that helps quite a bit. And then on top of that, we went to traction control, and that made a huge difference as well. When the mellower map and the traction control on high, that made the biggest difference in the world, and actually it helped a lot. Just today was a lot of single track and kind of rocky and choppy, and it's hard to get into a flow or go anything fast. I think that smoother power helped out quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I've ridden the R version too, and I think the R version's a lot more aggressive, and like Trevor said, when you put it through the 3 maps, the third one's obviously really aggressive, but once you put it down in that second one, this bike's super rideable, nothing crazy that's just gonna shoot it out from under you, you know? And the motor's it's a reliable motor. I like Honda motors. I always think that the power bands are always really nice in them, and the 3 mappings makes it really nice. If you were to go to, a moto track and try to moto this, it can still handle that, or go out here and ride something a little bit softer and you don't want as much power. This bike can handle that very well too.
Yeah, no, the mapping's a big deal, and the traction control all helps. So it's definitely, I think it was a step in the right direction for Honda, especially off-road. We'd like to see a few more changes that we think we could make, just with some setup and stuff with the motor, but overall it is a step in the right direction. And kind of moving on to the suspension, because I struggled a little bit today. I just didn't feel like I had the best balance on the bike overall. The forks felt a little soft and low, and the rear felt a little high, and it's kind of just chasing setup a little bit today, but I didn't have a whole lot of time, and kind of jumping back and forth between bikes and stuff, so it's hard to kind of get accustomed to the setup right away, especially since I didn't feel quite as comfortable on it as I'd like to. But overall suspension felt pretty decent for what it is, and we're out trail riding, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily set up for this kind of riding, but definitely for an off-road setting, more like enduro-y. It worked pretty good.
For this bike, definitely I would want to run a lower sag just to let this bike, it feels very stink bug-ish when you first get on it and set it to the normal 105. I would drop down a little bit, would be the only thing I'd change on that aspect wise, and I think it would make this bike ride a lot better. Overall, like Trevor said, the suspension feels a little bit soft, which it was to the point where it almost felt harsh in a sense, which I didn't enjoy, and I think though if you stiffened it up, it would make this bike a lot better in the tight rocky stuff.
Yeah, I did stiffen it up to the forks 2 clicks, and that did help quite a bit. I think we dropped the forks and the clamps a little bit. On past Hondas, we've had a good experience with that. So I think on this Honda, we probably will do the same, and it helped out a little bit. And like I said, a little more sag, just get the rear end down, a little more balance. Bike's not crazy far off. It just wasn't perfect right out of the gate, which is tough to do, especially for off-road. I mean, it's so varied from fast desert to Grand Prix to GNCC. It's kind of hard to set off-road bikes up for one thing. So definitely a little more setup time, and we feel like we get pretty comfortable on this suspension. Kind of the handling, same thing. Dropping the forks, just get a little more stability out of it. It corners really well, corners sharp, very light and playful and agile. And a lot of that goes back to the motor too. It's very snappy. It'll blip with the throttle, you can pop the front end up and kind of change directions easy. So the new chassis is definitely very precise and agile. I like to see a little more stability out of it, and I think that's where the setup time will come in handy, but overall it does feel like an improved over the last generation.
It's a very light bike, like Trevor said. It's easy to maneuver and put wherever you want, or turn wherever you want. It's a very rigid bike too, so you always want to make sure that you're clicking up a gear, because when it revs, it seems to just kind of get really tight, and you're fighting the bike. But as soon as you click it up a gear, this bike rides a lot better and a lot smoother, and just opens the whole bike up and isn't so tight on the chassis.
Yeah, that's typical of 450s. A lot of them, the more you rev it, the worse they handle. And this bike is no different. And luckily, this bike has plenty of power to pull taller gears, and you can lug it, and it's still, yeah, it'll pull it no problem. So overall, very good bike. I feel it's improved over the 21 and 22. Kind of smaller changes on paper, but they do translate to the track pretty well. And yeah, we look forward to putting more time on it, get a little better setup, and kind of maybe compare it to some of the other offerings in the class and see how they all stack up. So until then, Trevor Hunter. Find me at trevor@dirtbiketest.com or at trevorhunter224 on Instagram. Hit me up for any questions or comments on this bike or anything else, and we'll see if we can get it answered. So stay tuned, and we'll see you out in the trails.